Awesome. So here we are, week 2 of the Observatory, and we're on the theme of interdimensionality, and this week we're focusing on the foundations of interdimensionality and quantum language. I almost wanted to just be like a podcast host and be like, we have Nikki with us as we discuss.
Yes, that's right.
It's like, thank you very much for joining us on the show today.
Happy to be here.
So I wanted to ask, before we get started, just kind of if there are any experiences from week 1 that you wanted to share at this point before we move any deeper into all of this.
Let me look, because I did take notes on week 1. Let me see if I can find them. I mean, I guess I didn't have any questions. I had just never seen it all laid out like that before. So I think I just really had written down what you had spoken. I don't think I have any questions right now. I would have written them. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have any questions.
No, don't apologize. It's all good. I just wanted to make sure I opened the floor before going any further.
I think I'm good.
Yeah, and to anyone that's listening too, if you have questions, put them in the comments, because I'm going to post the recording and then I'll address them there. That way nobody feels left out of the opportunity.
Yeah.
So actually, I'm going to erase what I wrote because that's not where we're starting yet on my whiteboard. Okay. So considering the concept of dimensions and building upon that from last week, things that I kind of determined within my studies and preparing for this lecture today is dimension as blank. And it's dimension as direction, dimension as perspective, dimension as choice. The universe acting as a nesting doll of dimensions, levels of perception and experience, all born from a single point or origin. And so with that put into consideration, we can always start with origin points, and an origin point kind of in this, as far as this discussion is concerned, is anything that can be considered a fundamental building block of the universe that we experience. So time, gravity or potential energy, light or knowledge / consciousness, and matter being the basis of interpretation of the interaction of these forms and building blocks. So matter is being imposed upon by these universal dimensional building blocks. And I'm going to get more into that once we kind of expand outward. I'm getting fucking excited and I got to calm down before I start talking really fast and drink some water.
I know I'm writing so messy right now. It's very good though. It's very good. All right.
So I wrote down kind of an example or just a list of these origin points as they came to mind. This is all very stream of consciousness, by the way. So it's I'm reading ridiculously. They'd be messy notes if they weren't typed up, but informationally they're really messy.
Okay, great.
So origin points being the Big Bang, which in parentheses I put cosmic egg, the atom, the cell, the actual eggs that that we're born from that we have Earth, the sun, the center of the galaxy or black hole, since that is kind of that central fusing point. So before we kind of jump off from the origin point that we literally stand on, Earth, I wanted to talk a little bit more about kind of the types of dimensions, because spatially it's good to it's good to kind of have an idea of what we're talking about when it comes to dimensions, and in order to see what type of parallels we can draw from that. And in my research, I really like how this one guy put it, because I'm going to put some of these videos in the group so you all can experience them. But okay, so I'm gonna draw these spheres, and these spheres are atoms or object, they're just objects that exist, like three-dimensional objects of some sort, right? Or I don't even know what to call them. Oh, Terp. Let me let Terp in real quick.
Yay! Good. I don't want to be the only one. Only because my brain's fried. So I'm like, what if she asked me a question? I feel like a student. I'm such a student today. I'm going back to school now.
It's okay. I'm always a student. It's good to be a student.
Me too. It's the best. It's the only way.
Yeah. Hey, Chirp. I was just bringing out the whiteboard and getting real serious with it. You can unmute yourself. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm so tardy. My new boots came and I got really distracted.
Those are amazing.
Yes. Your new boot goofing.
Yeah, I feel like Batman.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I got distracted. I'm rubbing leather honey into them. Just like, oh, new boots. We're both boot people. You get it.
I love boots.
Boots are great. It's the season for boots.
It is.
But Terp, we were just about to get into it. I just talked about kind of what dimensions are. I wrote direction, perspective, choice, the universe being a nesting doll of dimensions, levels of perception, experience, all born from an origin point. And I'm just going to recap real quick. So anything that is like an origin point is a fundamental building block of the universe. So it can be anything like time, it can be gravity or potential energy, it could be light, which is also knowledge or consciousness, and then matter is that interpretation of the interaction of those different points.
Wow.
And so the origin points being the Big Bang or the cosmic egg, the atom, the cell, our actual eggs, Earth, sun. Yeah.
This is
black hole.
I have a blank nesting doll set that I've been needing to paint for years. It's egg-shaped. It's so cool. I'm not sure what to paint it with. Nikki, you know this feeling where it's like, oh, what if I fuck it up? It's so cool, but it's a nesting doll of eggs.
I love that you posted something recently too that was, which artist was it? About how you just have to do it.
Oh, Saul.
You know what I'm talking about? Saul LeWitt, that's it.
He's my favorite. He's such an asshole.
You just got to do it. I know, he really is. Stop licking me.
Just paint a square on the wall. Just let someone else paint a square on the wall and send them a certificate of authenticity, and it's art. That's all you got to do. Just
that's it.
He's my favorite dickhead.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
All right, sweetie.
So I was going to go into drawing kind of the different categories of dimension, or ways that we can consider dimensions. And so one would be like the traditional spatial dimensions, which would be like in a cube, it'd be like length, width, height. It would be basically what the physical structures kind of interact with and how they interact. So like length, width, that. So it brings us to like 3 dimensions. I feel like I could do a better job of representing that on this drawing, but
don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
And then let's see. And then the next one would be superspatial, which would be more so dealing with the space between objects, and that would be like another 3 dimensions. And then intraspatial, which would in fact be the 3 dimensions within one of those objects or structures that's experiencing space. So it would be like our inner self, like our mother, father, and child, like those archetypes of us, like that holy trinity of self. And then with time, as we know it now being one type of dimension, obviously with 4D, and then super time, which would be a much larger structure of time in which perhaps many like universes move through space, for example. That's extremely fucking theoretical, so like I'm not going to go any more into that. But then there's the 0 point which brings us to 12. The 0 point is ultimately like what our goal is to be, like that divine, like unified, like void, self. So, you can say that there are 12 dimensions when you count the self. A lot of people want to say there's 11, but I feel like you also have to put into account the observer. So with that said, I'm going to kind of go back through the dimensions and kind of talk about them, because I know we had time to explore them with that graphic that I shared, but I wanted to kind of take it a step further based off of some of the research and some of the personal experience that I feel like I have to kind of broaden our scope a bit. And so in hopes that everyone can walk away with a more personal experience of these dimensions. So, of course, 1D, like we talked about last time, is Earth. It's like the Logos. It's that origin point. That like it's a building block. So much of what we experience naturally is, a very earthly, earthling point of view of existence. And moving from that, we have 2D, which is the more like ecosystem, nature aspect. Oh, and I'll go back. 1D would be neutral. And then 2D is feminine, because I wanted to have the interplay of like neutral, feminine, and masculine, because I still felt it's necessary to incorporate that trinity, because the triangle is such a huge force within like the structure of our universe and within like sacred geometry. So we have to be able to like count for that when we're talking about dimensions, especially because it is what creates the stability that all of this form is founded on. So 2D is more like the ecosystem, nature. It's a feminine aspect. I like to call it, because, 2D, 1D is the point. 2D is the direction, to another point, essentially. And like I was talking about in the video that I put on Instagram recently, it's like, this is that emotion or expression, like this is, in a way, kind of like the line is the art and how we interact and combine these lines, right? So like polarity, the contrast is like Abraham Hicks would put it. Polarity is really what forces us to create some form of expression or some basis of what our reality is, which brings us into the 3D, which is that masculine aspect. I'm going to put it up here, actually, so it more represents like a masculine triangular form, which is more like creativity. And here we have like space, time, gravity, all kind of interacting in one and build. It's all three of those fucking building blocks I was talking about. So it brings it back to that. And 3D is us experiencing the most basic forms of the universe. So, okay, this is, I feel like, where it's going to get a little wild. So, I'm not going to go there yet. So also you can consider the other trinities that we experience as earthlings within this 3D environment. There's the relationship, like on the day-to-day, there's the relationship of the earth, moon, and sun and how it affects us. It creates these cycles of time, like day and night. And then also like the parts of self, like, ego, id, what's the third one?
Superego.
Superego. Thank you.
Yeah.
The mother, father, son, like all of that. It's where we're experiencing all of it, but we still see it as separate. They're not all combined into one, because we can only truly, at this point, we can only like kind of experience one at a time. So that's when we go into 4D, which is, it's like time. And that's where we experience the supernatural. That's where we experience the astral realm. That's where we experience archetypes. It's basically where once we're aware of it, that's when we become aware of our personality, of our self-concept, and where we're influenced. So that is where we're able to then not just, see these things as separate, but explore them. This is where we get more tapped into an understanding of our emotion, because like 4D, I'm not going to draw a fucking tesseract. I'm not going to do it. But that's where we're experiencing the pressure of like who we've been, who we are now, and who we want to be. And so those are all different archetypes of self, essentially, when you put it simply. And so it's really us being able to observe and witness our evolution or our emotion, with E representing energy. So energetic motion, energetic evolution, which would be a rolling or revolving motion. So we're experiencing our own personal cycles, whether they are, circular or exist within like a spiral, depending on, whether or not you get trapped in certain patterns or not. But if you don't get trapped in a certain pattern, then you've basically moved on to experience 5D, which to me, I categorize as a masculine aspect. I wrote superhuman. It's adaptation, choice. It's also representation of spirit, because that is our breath, like the word, the word that created everything. It's when we begin to access that level of choice, like when we actively seek to combine and have the force of the divine and integrate that kind of superpower, I'll say. So in the 5D, we become a reflection of who we choose to be, a product of our own decision-making. And here I like to represent like the concept of the pentagram, the upright one, which, you have the four elements, and then you have mind here at the top. And so it's mind over matter. And so it's when your mind begins to influence the building, like the kind of building blocks of form that we have, and begin to try to, again, behave in this divine manner, in this divine way that is able to eventually manipulate these building blocks through the power of the word, through the power of speech, because 5D is also related to our throat chakra, I think, like I mentioned before. Well, what's really interesting that I wanted to talk about is there's such a thing in music theory called the circle of fifths. And the circle of fifths, which, I'll do a brief little, I pulled up a quick video that y'all can watch. Let me see here. How do I share my screen? I always forget how to do this. Here we go. So I'm going to play this real quick just so you can kind of see it, and then I'm going to get into some more stuff about it, which is pretty cool. But a circle. So this is what a circle of fifths essentially looks like.
Wow.
And
cool.
And even then, sorry, let me see. I'm going to pull up another one sec, that you can actually kind of look at for a second. Oh, there we go. Ooh. So that's what that looks like. So, hold on. Okay. So basically, I'm going to take it off now so I can see stuff on my computer. There we go. So circle of fifths helps in switching between keys, helping to memorize like chord progressions, and by being able to identify key signatures in music. And so basically it's us learning in 5D to adapt and create harmony, which leads us to the sixth dimension, which is neutral in terms of like charge. And this is where we begin to go online with our Merkaba. So which would be our light vehicle, and which is the unification of the masculine and feminine aspects of self, which then cancel each other out. So we enter this form, like this place of balance. This would be associated with our third eye chakra, which it makes sense when you open your third eye, you're reaching this place of, being lit up, accessing different knowledge, reaching another level of understanding. And so with 6D, I wrote, light vehicle goes online, neutral form, simply being. So this is another point of observation. And I feel like every time we reach a neutral point, it's a time to pause and to observe in order to comprehend where you've been, which then would lead us to 7D, which is, I put as a feminine aspect or negative, if we wanted to talk about charge. And it's funny because I was thinking of 7 in terms of it being a combination of 3 and 4. So it's like in its own way, a certain progression or a step within itself. And so I wrote the notes like formation, body, influence, all chakras online, all chakras open. We become basically a complete body of information, able to receive and bridge frequencies. So it's like after the state of being in the 6D, we then hop on the 7D and we're able to receive frequencies and actually be a transmitter of them. So a lot of people who are having an awakening, it's like they've kind of reached or had a point of maybe 7D consciousness. Maybe when we're channeling, maybe we're reaching some type of 7D consciousness in order for us to be able to bridge through and kind of step down like highly charged information and make it something that, us as humans in our physical form can interact with and begin to play with and get curious about and actually put into action. And so there we go a step further. And this like 8D would be like our soul star chakra, which is that chakra that rests like above our crown. It's usually where we like to say like our higher self lingers, right? But here it's like, it's a positive charge. This is where we kind of reinvent or experience oneself based on distance, based on time, the like progress that we've made, being able to kind of process those frequencies. We actively reflect that knowledge, observed, and begin to process like solar consciousness at this level. So 8D is like solar consciousness. Like, what was I going to say?
What does that mean though?
Solar consciousness.
Yeah.
So it's basically like being able to interact with planetary archetypes. So this is where you start to kind of get a little off world. And it's when you're able to then start looking at things a little more cosmically because you start to receive those frequencies by having all of your chakras online. So your light body is on, it's fully activated, it's receiving transmissions. And now at the 8D, it's able to reflect those transmissions outwards, very much like the sun reflects and transmits light to Earth. And with that, it's also able to then, I want to say, move up. I want to say through this progression, you end up going into 9D. It's like as the sun, you create a system around you of archetypes. So that's when you begin to experience and acknowledge kind of like creating a system based off of your experiences that you can reflect out too. So it's almost like, I hate to say this, but like finding your tribe. So it's like coming online and being able to access those of your soul cluster and being able to identify them immediately.
Like what you're trying to do by finding the Venetia system.
Yeah.
You mean what she's doing right now?
Yeah.
With everything, literally? Yes.
With her whole life. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good.
Y'all.
I love you.
I love you too. I love you too. We're part of each other's solar systems. We're in the same galaxy. We're all in the same galaxy. So so moving on, like 9D is where that system kind of takes in place. It's neutral. This is what I kind of wrote being like the galactic logos. It's this pull from within. And so it's like selective gravity. It's like you've really chosen kind of what your pull is and what you attract on a much larger scale. Because now that you have full access to certain levels of knowledge that can manipulate form, and you've, again, this is another point of unification, because we have, we're at the third of our neutral points, I believe here, which means we've gone through a full cycle of like feminine neutral points and masculine neutral points. So this is like big time, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I didn't really break it down like that, but just so you know, it's like almost completing like a circuit at this 9D level.
Wow, yeah.
Because dimensions, as they're built, when you build them, like here's the like all dimensions are built on the idea of them being 90 degrees from one another. So you have 1D, 2D, and then you have 3D. Wait, no. Right? Sorry, hold on. I'm trying to think. Yeah, and then you go down here, which would create the square. And then you like create a cube because you need to have another square, which would be 3D. And then you'd form more squares on that to make 4D. I'll show you a video that explains it much better. But 90 degrees equal a square. It's a block. It's an obstacle, which is super funny, which is like, this is where the quantum language kind of goes into play, which let me pull up what I was going to say here. So obstacle, I looked up the root word, of course, because Venetia's got to talk about words. And OB is in front of, against, and sta is to stand, make, or be firm. So to stand in front of, hold on, what was I going to say? To stand in the way of, to stand in front of. And, you know, we have the whole concept of this being like a mirror universe. So each dimension is ultimately revealing more of ourselves and showing us the way of just what is. So next time you think of obstacle, or next time you encounter an obstacle, that is the way. So anyways, moving on from 9D, we go to 10D, which is feminine or negative in charge. It's kind of like, I'm not going to say that. I don't agree with that note I wrote anymore. Okay, so 10D is like a complete paradigm shift, is what I put here. Because if 9D, let me pull up. I have like so many notes. 1 second. So if 9D is like this like galactic center, let's just say that, then 10D is that galactic center that's aware of itself. And then, so once it becomes aware, it then wants to then adapt to something else or to shift in some way, you know, because once we become aware of something, we either want to like use it and go, you know, some change wants to happen. Either we take action or we decide we want to change something about how we're showing up, right? And so 11D, 11D, which is like which I put as like positive or masculine charge, is actually very similar to 1D. So it's like, once we pass 90, it's like we're working from this strange kind of galactic place where it's like, my brain's not ready to go right there right now, but I'm going to skip to 12D because I have way more to say about that. So 12D is going back to the 0 point. And it is kind of like, I wrote just like neutral creator. And so what I wanted to talk about with 12D is it's like, consider again, music. It's like 12 notes. And we have, you know, sharps, flats, and regular notes. And those are 12 different, that equal 12 notes. Like that would be like, contained within an octave, right? So with that being said, I almost feel like the octave or the 8D is probably the last point where we're really in some type of physicality, you know, where we really have any type of body. Because past that, it's like we don't have notes, and it's just like weird infinite space, which at that point to me would just be like the resonance or the echo of that, like some potential force that exists between those notes and their sound. So here I wrote for 12D, like you hyphen universe, or you need verse, which I put in parentheses like musical instrument, rhythm, combining form, poetry, rhyme, reason. Like we're basically at a blank slate again with 12D in this void space. And then consider zodiac, or like the astrology, like the chart. There are 12 houses that complete this circular system. And so 12D is this threshold between a closed system, which is the one we just completed, and an open one in which like you can become the creator and set a new structure together. So what I wanted to talk about here before I move on even further, let's see. Share screen. So, do you see that? So, like, here's the houses, or the wheel. And so, like, that would just be a whole self. That would be like our cell of influence, basically. That would be the universe, you know, as a marble at the end of Men in Black. Like that would basically be it. But it was so funny because when I was looking at this and I noticed these phases, these 4 phases, like the 4 seasons, and I was like, fuck, it's seasons, it's also phases of matter. So if you wanted to go back through the dimensions, you can actually divide them up into phases of matter. That way, like at the 3rd dimension, you're kind of, you're in this solid state. In the first phase, it's all solid states of being, solid states of dimension that you're experiencing, right? And then in the 2nd phase, things are more fluid. This is the area of thought, of time, right? And then the 3rd phase, which is like more gaseous. And so that's when we make the transition to move out of our bodies, like to shift out of this physicality by raising our frequency through thought. And then this 4th phase, plasma, is where we're basically this electrical charge, this resonance, this force, you know, that space between notes, that potential force that's able to then, you know, separate itself and create something new altogether, which is pretty fucking wild. So anyways, I thought about that and I wanted to share that because I thought that was really cool. Wait, did you guys see it? No, you didn't see it. Is that better? Can you see it now? I'm so sorry, y'all.
That's all right. Yay!
My B.
Cool. Yes. Okay. Yeah. I was visualizing what you were saying, but that helps a lot.
And I even love how on the edges of this, it says like 1st phase, first 3 dimensions. I'm going to call them dimensions instead of houses, like awareness of self, you know, 2nd phase, you know, dimensions 4 through 6, integration of self with environment. And then phase 3, you know, is awareness of other, which would be like creator, you know, not like other humans, you know. And then phase 4, integration of self with society. I would say integration of self within the cosmos, so like, or galaxy. So like that's that galactic experience, which is like, yeah. So your girl's been really fucking busy today. Like getting wild on this stuff. So, but it's been fun. So moving on from that, which you like, what? You're moving on from 12D, Venetia? Like, I thought we already made it through all this. Well, 13D, 13th dimension is the next system, is when it's the feminine aspect. It's basically you become the creator. Like this is the point where like multiverse begins to happen, and we have like I wrote down like choir or like new chords, so it's like a new system of harmonics that is able to be defined here. And so in 13D, when you reach this new level, you're able to create something at this point, which would be relative to the first dimension, is like you're just kind of experiencing that unified field, which you're kind of going to build upon. It's you're defining what the system is receptive to, what defines it. Because whatever you make the second dimension is basically like the rule or the measurement of that structure. That is like itself the pillar of information and what makes something stable. So moving from like, so in this system, it's like we move from like analog to digital. So we move from having like a closed system of things just kind of repeating and being different to some type of digital experience of zeros and ones. It's like we're creating some type of new current, some new circuit, some new matrix. And what I was thinking about was the two, like in our system, in our universe, like 2D, I talked about it being feminine. I talked about it being emotion and polarity. And how polarity is a really creative form when used correctly and not being absorbed into either or, right? I keep saying it's a both experience. So it's like systems in this dimension are created through feeling and acceptance of emotional freedom to choose based on experience of structure and form. So it's like substantial, like advocacy, like advocating for the essence of what we're experiencing and then creating from that. So that's why everyone has, that's why it's such a fucking maniacal thing to pin people against one another based off of how they feel about something. It's like really chaotic and works against the system that we live in. So it works against nature itself. So yeah, I was gonna say more, but I think I'm like done talking about dimensions for a little while. But what is interesting is that gravity does become weaker as it travels up dimensions. So whenever you hit like an origin point, like that is usually the most dense part of that gravity of that like system. Because it's drawing in what it needs and what building blocks it needs in order to create based off of the second point that it creates for itself. So whatever type of goal it creates for itself, the importance that it like feeds into it creates the gravity or that potential energy to attract what it needs. So it's like another, like gravity is kind of another way at looking at like electromagnetism. I don't know if you want to like make a lateral move into like different language-based systems or disciplines. So moving on from that, I want to touch on quantum language because, a lot of people are talking about, well, 5D. It's like, well, we're kind of already in 5D, but we don't realize it. We don't realize that social media, I feel like, is kind of manipulating our ability to experience 5D in its like purest form that we're constantly being subject to different matters of opinion and conflicts that leave us feeling either that we're misrepresenting ourselves or we're being misrepresentative or having us hold on to false self-concepts in order to fit an artificial system built within a system. And for those of us who realize that's going on, I feel like we're much closer to that neutral creativity, that 6D feeling. And then I feel like a lot of light workers, a lot of people like us in these groups are already kind of plugged into that 7D spirit, And I feel like by the end of all this, we'll have reached perhaps that solar consciousness aspect where we're all taking, I feel like it's almost like solar consciousness is where we like really set our fucking boundaries and like they work for us. Like we've reached a place, it's like we get it. Because I feel like all of this, like working through the dimensions, being interdimensional is all about being trained to eventually become a universe. Like, it's like, oh my God, the Mormons are right. Like, you do a good job, you die, and then you get a planet.
Oh my lives.
Everybody's got to be a little right. Everybody gets a touch of it right.
Yeah.
Why not them?
But one thing that I thought was super cool, maybe I'm not going to talk about quantum language this time, because this is like, I'm really fucking geeked up off this shit right now. I'm going to draw something for you. I forgot how to count. All right. It's okay. Okay, let me do it this way. Sorry, y'all. So I was thinking about how alternate realities could go, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I was talking about the difference in the charges and all of that. And this, I think, would probably bring me into string theory. I'm not quite sure here. But, you know, 6 is that midpoint. Like 60 is the midpoint. It's like when you're halfway there. Because it's so funny, because when we move from 0 to 6, it's like we're having this, it's overall like a positively charged type of energy where we're building something and we're being really active, like in our learning and in our experience. And then on the overall flow from like 6 to 12, or I guess 0, it's more of this like feminine, I'm receiving and accepting like what is, because I've already done the work and set the structure up to just let it be and let it exist, right? And then, you know, it starts back over again. So then it would move back into like, it's just this cycle, right? So we're really existing in some type of, some type of like wave. Like I was talking about before, like that wave, that DNA, the string. So I just thought that was super cool and I wanted to share it. Kind of looking at the larger scope of things. So with all that said, and with 60 kind of being that place, that like fulcrum point, and looking what, right, the step that comes before and the step comes after. So if we're going like linearly, I mean, and like, honestly, like we get mad about linearity. We get mad about it because, you know, things are more fluid and flowy and all of this and that, but it's like, you know, the line itself can be wiggly and squiggly and be all string theory like, right? But we're not quite at that place where we feel like we experience that sometimes. So quantum language, when talking about quantum language, it's really us interacting and trying to make that step from 5D to 6D. So getting to a place of stability by understanding what we're speaking out into the universe, and how that divine consciousness comprehends the system of language and communication, different mediums and disciplines that we agreed upon. So this is where like the average person kind of looks at all of the things they interact with to communicate their intentions on a day-to-day basis. So it's like through their actions, through their diet, through their actual language, speech, interactions. Because evolution is usually created based off of an interaction with an environment, with an atmosphere, you know, and we basically choose our environment based off of our own personal preference or concept of self. Like, I don't like hot, I don't like cold, I don't like wet, I don't like dirty, stuff like that. But so we create an environment for ourselves and create an environment for ourselves in order to reach a place where we can nest and find that sense of neutrality, to where we feel comfortable, or like to where we feel like we can comprehend what's going on without judgment to a certain degree. Not having to it's almost like, because considering the Merkaba, it's like not really having to need or seek anything and just being kind of like just influencing things based off of how you want them to go about, for better or for worse. And so what was I going on about that? So that's why our language, our communication is so important, and not being a victim to that. So the most basic statements being like talking about work, like I have to go to work, or I get to go to work, or just fucking saying I'm going to work. Like we can have a feeling about an experience, but what we communicate in the best way possible, if we feel like we can be neutral about it, then that's the best way to go, because it opens us up to the most possibilities of what we're going to experience that day, which may help us shift and reach a form of a place of equilibrium within our own feeling state or experience, which allows us then to feel complete. Because if we're able to ease the tension of where we're trying to go and just allow ourselves to be carried through it instead of having to face all of these obstacles. Because if your mirror is is as relaxed as you are, then there's an easier chance of getting by it, or just sitting down and having a talk with it. But it's more easy for you to get into that 7D, like light body, like, all systems go, receiving information. And that's when our intuition can then just be the driver, because we're not like fighting it. We're not pulling the strings. It's like, no, intuition knows how to fucking operate this ship. Okay. Like, let me do this. Stop trying to fight me. You're acting like a toddler. We humans act like toddlers. I'm just going to say it. So basically what we're experiencing is people having to learn that they're toddlers, and for us to realize that we're all psychic, and what being psychic means, it just means we have a different driver than what we initially thought. And that's why, yes, it's difficult when there are people who are having like actual like issues getting like things to satisfy their physical needs, but that's like spiritual warfare. Class warfare is spiritual warfare. Point blank. Like, I'm just going to say it, and I'm going to fucking put it on Instagram. Like, because if people can't have what they need to live a day-to-day life, like in their physicality, then they're by no means going to feel safe enough to let some unknown force guide them, no matter how all-pervading it is, So, and we know this, but it's always good to be reminded.
It's been 5 for like 3 minutes now, so.
What?
I've been staring at my clock, and it's been 5:55 for like 5 minutes now, so I think it's important.
What? Woo!
5:55.
I love that.
Oh, it just changed.
I love that.
It just changed.
Damn.
Well, I think that's all I have to say, y'all, because that was like a lot.
That was incredible.
That
was incredible. Yeah.
That was a good Venetian rant.
Yeah.
What?
That was a good Venetian rant.
Thank you.
Venetian rant.
Yeah, like fuck a TED Talk. This is a Venetia rant.
Yes. Yeah, that was amazing.
Thank you. Do you all have any like questions or anything that you want to like? Yeah.
Do you think that, at least in some levels, that we can move up and down, almost like a spiral of like 1D to 6D? You could be at 60 and then fall back down again. Do you think that's possible?
Absolutely.
Is it like one of those children's slides?
Because I feel, yes, just like that. Because I feel like I have experienced that. Because when I had I'm always talking about awakenings because mine was so jarring, and that I researched it. And when I was researching it, and I started researching string theory, and I started looking up quantum physics stuff. Like, that was my natural inclination. I didn't understand why I was doing that, but I did. And I never made full sense of it. So getting to see you explain it all, I'm just like, yep. Because when I had that awakening, I felt like I was in 6D. I was literally just like, everything's fine, but I wasn't getting my work done. I wasn't doing these certain things I was supposed to be doing that society would want me to do. My spirit was like, no, and shut everything down. It was like, you won't be doing any of that. And I was just like, okay. And I was totally fine with that. So it was a place of absolute peace. So that's why I was like, yeah, can we go up and then down and up and then down? Because I feel like I have experienced that. Yeah.
And it's funny. Okay. So yes, I absolutely think so. And I don't feel like it's a matter so much of up and down, more so than like past or future. Like, I feel like that's when time and our personal cycles create interference, because if we've overcome certain patterns or modes of being or situations, we're able to, stabilize that 6D consciousness, for example, in that point of our like pattern. But there are still other pieces to that pattern that need like resolution and up leveling. So like, it's like, that's when that time, element, which I feel like is what we're experiencing right now, because we're experiencing a lot of things that, what the fuck, like we should have dealt with this back then and this. And it's like, it feels like all of it's coming up at once, but in like a different inventive way.
And why am I still waiting on news from 2 months ago and getting things that were supposed to come 3 years from the future?
Exactly. It's like that.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like that is when those three aspects of self are kind of coming in and interacting, because we're also trying to integrate, we're still trying to integrate those cycles, those personal cycles.
Yes.
And and time is basically, when people say the whole like remembering and forgetting, that's time. That's what they're talking about, is how we experience time right now.
Yeah.
It's so fucking weird. Why is time so weird right
now? Fucking time, right?
The time flower bloomed. It was supposed to stop being so weird.
But time is distance. Time is distance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Yeah. But I think, is there anything else you'd like to ask before I like go collapse on my couch?
Yeah, that was amazing. I don't know I took like 5 pages of notes. I mean, it's like scribbly, but it's still like, you went a lot of places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Welcome now to my universe. And all of a sudden it's like the background like wasn't a real background, and I'm like somehow floating and like disappear. Like that next time I need like a special effects person.
Yeah,
you do.
Once I get a bigger budget, backgrounds.
Yeah, I need to like step this up. Let's make it theatrical.
Yeah, that was incredibly helpful. You just made so much sense of so many things that I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And to see it and to be able to have somebody speak it to you is pretty incredible. Because it's like I feel these things, but I cannot explain them.
It's difficult. I mean, if you caught me maybe on Tuesday, I wouldn't have been able to explain it as well. But for some reason, time permitted this crack in the system. So, but I'm going to put up the recording on Patreon so you all can, like, if there's anything you feel like you missed or wanted to, like, if there are any notes that if you wanted to clean up your notes or anything and there was something like a hole in the information. And then, okay, so next week, what are we going to get into next week? I might talk about language a bit more. Week 3 is talking about 5D. So yeah, if we're going to talk about 5D, I'm definitely going to talk more about language. And I think there's going to be some review in terms of some of the stuff that I talked about within the Guna word. So come prepared with any types of words that you feel like would be interesting to explore, or any types of words you yourself might have dissected and elevated to a point of higher consciousness. a higher understanding, whether it's based through etymology or by actually breaking it down like I do, like breaking down the syllables and forming new like phrases within words, because that's fun. So if you want homework, that's your homework. But other than that, I don't know yet what the meditation for this week is going to be. I'll get there.
Take your time. Take your time. You just spent yourself. You just like,
you're doing the
you're
most.
going to need to rest. Yeah.
I appreciate that you like found this new format and it's allowing you to like shoom, but like also like
also
yeah. Yeah.
Fair enough. I appreciate the reminder.
Awesome.
So yeah. Well,
I need to be reminded of that all the time. So I love that. Okay. Sorry.
All right. Well, I'm going to hop off and go collapse. Maybe like, eat food. What do we call it? Food?
Food?
Eat one egg. One egg and...
I'm going to go eat an origin point real quick. Scramble.
Yeah. Yes.
But I appreciate y'all so much. And thank you for showing up today. And have a good night. Marco Polo me if you want to talk about anything while I like lay down and eat egg.
Yes, that's going to be good. You got to. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You got it. All right. Until
Bye.
until same space time, same time space. I gotta solidify that. All right. Bye.
Bye.